that do away with all that control and all that yelling. I know all that stuff doesn't feel good for you either. It doesn't feel good to us when we have to yell at our kids. Well, I'm going to begin to expose you to other ways that you can help your kids realign their behaviors without you needing to be the strict controller or disciplinarian. So what else can we do besides controlling our kids or yelling at our kids? Yesterday, we talked about the art of creating conscious boundaries. Well, there are other things we can do in addition to that. So one of the first things we can begin to implement is the power of natural learning. You know, since I'm so deeply against using punishment of any sort toward our children, what I do believe is an effective replacement strategy for that, to teach them the right way to behave, is to implement the power of natural and logical consequences, the natural learning that occurs in life, to highlight that and to use that as a way to teach our children. So, natural and logical consequences, these aren't imposed by parents. You know, we don't have to give a consequence. They directly arise out of the answer to the question, what is the need being expressed by my child's behavior? You see, once we can determine the underlying need, and I've been talking about identifying the emotional need for a while now, so once we can pinpoint the underlying need, then we can connect the appropriate effect with the cause. Beware, it's really tempting for parents to want to create an effect, create the consequence for the cause. But if the power of natural consequences are truly to work, then they cannot be tied to us in any way, to our creation of them, but they must arise spontaneously, organically, from the cause of our kids' behavior. So if our kids do something that is inappropriate or bad, then we as parents need to step back and allow the effect to naturally arise from the cause of our children's behavior. We don't have to jump in, we don't have to impose, we don't have to do a thing. There is such a thing as the power of natural learning, and this is what I'm talking about. You see, when we don't jump in and micromanage and create our children's reality, you know, life has a way of just naturally teaching all of us the right ways to be. You know, life follows quite naturally the principles of if X happens, then Y is going to happen. You know, there's always a cause and effect occurring in life. In fact, I always say, leave it to cause and effect. Cause and effect is the greatest teacher in life. It's how we learn the best, because there's nobody imposing their way. It is the natural way of existence. So when we leave our children to be exposed to natural consequences, if we allow children to follow the natural order of things, the if-then principle that naturally follows cause, effect, then we take ourselves out of the role of being the disciplinarian. And actually, our children learn in the most powerful and deep way through this natural cause and effect. You know, of course, we should never let ourselves completely off the hook. We must keep examining ourselves. We begin to realize that a large part of the cause and effect of our children's behavior, as I talked about yesterday, has to do with us, the parent, has to do with how ambivalently we are creating conditions in the house. We are part of the cause and effect. And if we pretend that our children are creating their own cause and effects without us realizing that we are intricately involved in that cause and effect, then nothing will change. So part of exposing our children to the cause and effect is for us to realize that we are part of the cause, we are part of the effect. So our role as conscious parents is to bring that into conscious awareness. What part of the cause am I? What part of the effect am I? And as we begin to tweak that, and often it's all about us laying clear boundaries and communicating them, then our children will align into place. So let's take some examples, right? So if the child gets an A grade, for instance, we think in the old paradigm that we should rush in to gush and reward and give the child a gift. little do we realize that there's a natural effect that follows the cause of getting an A grade. The natural effect is that the child gets rewarded inherently. The grade itself is a natural gift to the child. It's the natural reward for the child. Just getting that, the obtainance of that is the natural gift. So when we realize that, then we can simply be joyous with the child. We don't have to rush in to micromanage. Similarly, when our child gets a C grade, we, in the traditional way, have been conditioned to believe that we need to interject. We need to give a consequence. We need to do something to create in the child a learning that this is bad. We need to reprimand the child. Little do we realize, again, that there is a natural effect that follows the cause of getting a C. The child got a C grade, and because of that, there's a natural consequence in place. The child already feels a sense of incompetence or naturally feels a sense of regret or remorse. We don't have to do anything. You see, life naturally allows our children to learn. If we realize that and if we allow the power of that, then we release all control over our children. You see, the old paradigm sets this up within us. It's not our fault. The old paradigm tells us that, you have to do something. You have to create something. You have to fix something. And it's that traditional mandate that makes us interfere with the natural unfolding of cause and effect. And in that way, we rob our children from learning from the greatest teachers of life. I truly believe the natural cause and effect of life is, without doubt, the greatest teacher in our and our children's life. So let's come to another very little used strategy by parents. And I always encourage parents, use this strategy more. It's the entire strategy around creating win-win situations with our children, creating the opportunity to negotiate with your children. Now, many of you may balk at this and go, no, that's giving too much power to my kids. Kids should not have so much power. They shouldn't negotiate with an adult. Well, let me tell you why that's a fallacy. Kids should negotiate with adults because they are going to go out into the world as adults themselves one day, and all around them, they're going to have to negotiate. Nothing is unilateral in the world. Very few things really are. Most things are always up for negotiation. Life is mostly lived not in the black or white, it's lived in the gray. So setting our children up to understand the power of win-win situations is key. So entering the dynamic with our children, especially conflicts, with a different mindset, not the mindset of enforcing control, but the mindset of creating negotiation. Now you're moving away from battles and you're entering true cooperation. This is how children truly learn to connect with us, when they see us as their connectors, as their allies, as their partners. You see, we parents were so scared to give up our control that we don't realize what a powerful strategy we are wasting. It is the power of negotiation. I always tell parents, it looks like you're giving up control, but actually, you have the most control when you allow for negotiation. Negotiation allows for the least resistance. And that's what you're looking for as a parent. You're thinking to yourself, how do I allow for the least resistance? The least resistance can only be allowed when the other and you feel like you are co-owners of the process. You need to be an owner of the process, right? That's how you develop a sense of claim over your life. So it is with your children. Give them ownership over their life, they will resist you less. They resist you less, they actually end up doing what you want in the long run. So give up control in the short run, get control in the long run. But true control, control that is not abducted from our child, control that is co-created with our child. But before we move on and begin negotiating, I must caution you that there are some behaviors that our children exhibit and some behaviors that we exhibit that I call red flag behaviors. And those behaviors, I don't want you to negotiate. I want you to go seek help, seek guidance, and alleviate those with outside counsel. So those behaviors have to do with anything related to your kid harming themselves, harming others, sabotaging themselves through maybe not eating, not going to school, becoming depressed, anything that goes out of the purview of what's considered average or typical, I would like you to not try negotiating, but instead go seek help and truly get out of denial quickly, because we have a tendency to deny that this is happening. Call it a red flag behavior and go seek the guidance from somebody who is a professional who can help you. So when these red flag behaviors occur, the kid is harming themselves or sabotaging themselves or drinking too much, staying out too late, when it becomes too extreme, it's our instinct, because of the way we've been conditioned in the old paradigm, to actually step up control. We actually go all out. We become even more extreme. Let me caution you, red flag behaviors do very poorly with extreme control. In fact, when we up the ante on control, the kids' red flag behaviors become even redder. So that's why I caution you, recognize a behavior as a red flag behavior, release control, and go seek outside guidance with great compassion for what your children are going through. So for today's task, I'm going to really teach you an invaluable skill in my own life. It is the capacity to identify a reactivity cycle. When I began to examine my own reactivity cycle, things began to really shift in my own behavior. So what's a reactivity cycle? I want you to write it down. Something happens, we call it the stimulus. The next thing that happens that we are unconscious to, we are oblivious to, is that we have an interpretation, a thought around what happens. So our kid doesn't wake up. Neutral behavior, kid doesn't wake up. We have an immediate thought, oh my goodness, my kid is purposely not waking up. My kid is purposely being defiant. My kid is going to be a loser kid when he grows up. We make an interpretation of the neutral behavior. We have a thought, a belief system. The next thing we have is that we have a feeling. And the feeling is typically a desperate fear, a sense of helplessness. Of course you would have that, because look at the belief system you just created. You created a really dire, extreme sense of doom in your head. Of course, the next thing is panic. So typically the third thing that we do in our cycle is we panic. And guess what? When we panic, we feel all these sensations of utter helplessness, of hopelessness. So of course, we then go to step 4, which is we seek to control that. And how have we been trained to control that? To unleash onto the other, to react. This is the typical cycle. It's 4 steps. Most of us do this. I want you to write down these steps and then think of the last time you went into an outrage with your kid. Try to break down that reaction into these 4 steps. Notice how you took a neutral situation, developed a belief system of doom and gloom, had a feeling of panic, and then reacted. And now I want you to observe, where can I possibly break the cycle? Can you break it in the first step, second step, your last step? It changes for every situation and for every person. Each person is different at a different time. So I want you to challenge yourself to begin to observe, maybe I could have changed it there, or maybe I could have broken it there. And as you begin to break this cycle, which if you are not conscious of, it'll be like a loop in your mind and in your connectivity with your children. It'll just keep looping around. If you're not aware that you can break it, you have the power to break it, this will just continue as a habit. When we begin to break the reactivity cycle, now we offer ourselves choices. Choices such as conscious boundaries, examining our boundaries. Choices such as creating negotiation, creating win-win situations, entering empathy, compassion, attunement. Do you see? When we break out of the loop, now we offer the freedom of choice. So this is a powerful tool I have just given you. Use it daily. Reflect on it deeply. Tell us about your reactivity cycle. I'd love to hear from you. And I will see you back here tomorrow.